Welcome back to the 2013 main event final table from the Penn and Teller Theater. We've got you covered front, sideways, backwards. I'm Lon McCarran with Norman Chad, Antonio Estandiari, Kara Scott down on the floor. During the breaks, we're going to welcome Phil Hellmuth and Marianella Pereira, who will take you through the breaks, recapping what happened during the previous level and some interviews. And it's all going to be coming your way virtually live on ESPN2 tonight. And then, of course, we'll crown a champion on ESPN tomorrow night beginning at 9 p.m. Eastern. Early impressions, I mean, it's jaw-dropping poker and hands being thrown around, Antonio.
And some big laydowns. Very impressed so far. I mean, in my whole life, I don't think I've had so many big hands.
And Norman, these guys are getting to know each other a lot better now tonight. Probably more respect than they had for each other coming in.
Well, again, it's amazing. We've only played 14 or 15 hands, but no mistakes, no big mistakes, as we've noted. Great laydowns by several players.
Tran with a raise to 1.1 million. He is the slim chip leader over Amir Lehavat.
And the reason for the bigger raise is now the blinds have gone up to 250 and 500,000 with a 50,000 ante. So it's even more expensive per round.
Loosely folds. Brummelhouse gives up his button in the small blind. Newhouse lays it down to Ryan Reese. Reese with over 30 million. And top of the leaderboard is jammed full. Tran did it with 10-9 suited as Reese gives up queen 10.
This is one, right? Shit, I opened
J.C. Tran told his wife last year he was going to final table the main event in 2014.
I'm gonna rip mine. Okay.
As it turns out, he was a year early.
Maybe he'll do it. Here's what's at stake tonight. Of course, as I mentioned, the champion crowned tomorrow night on ESPN. 8.3 million for the champion. JC regarded as the best player. He was the chip leader. The chip leader has only won 4 of the last 10 main events. Coming into the final table, Brummelhouse and Loose Lee, can they be the first from their country to win it? Still 9-handed.
J.C. Tran set several goals years ago. He wanted to win a WPT. He did it. He wanted to win a bracelet. He did it. He wanted to make the main event final table, and he finally did it. And now his new goal is to win it all. But he says the pressure's really off.
And you mentioned this fact earlier in the season, Norman. 10 main event cashes, or 6 main event cashes and 10 tries for JC. It's incredible.
I felt something really weird. Like they were trying to pull me. They were trying to pull me.
Loosely folds. Brummelhouse has cards.
Yeah. With the ace
Healed Brummelhouse, 7th place with 13.1 million.
Yeah.
And he'll open the pot.
To 1,225,000. 1,225,000 from Brummelhouse. Lehavat now.
Amir won his bracelet in Pot Limit Hold'em in 2011.
This is his 2nd career, former engineer.
His demeanor reminds me of Alan Cunningham in a way. Seems very analytical to me. Very calm. I would take a piece of him in basically anything he wanted to do, I feel like. Not just poker.
Demeanor like Alan Cunningham, but profile of Eric Seidel.
Good point.
A Middle Eastern Seidel, perhaps?
Now, Lehavat has not been involved in a lot of hands. Of course, we saw he had kings earlier. But he looks like he wants to get involved with Brummelhouse here. Lehavat in the big blind, defending.
Raise.
And he repops it.
So this is one of the raises, one of those sorts of raises that basically Brummelhouse is gonna have to play for his whole stack. I mean, it's hard to call 3 million of a 13 million stack and play after the flop. And so Lehavat knows this. And so this puts a tremendous amount of pressure on Brummelhouse. If he doesn't have a premium hand, it's hard for him to continue.
The only hand we've seen from Brummelhouse is aces. And now being tested by the 2nd biggest stack, Amir Lehavat.
He doesn't seem nearly as confident as when he had aces.
Nope. And he gives it up. Lehavat does it with a suited ace. Brummelhouse gives up the bigger ace. So the stacks came into play there.
Absolutely. I mean, Lehavut had the bigger stack, and so he could really put pressure on his opponent there. And even a hand like ace-10, which is actually a pretty good hand, is now very tough to play.
All right, he came in with the second biggest stack, still has that second biggest stack. Let's take a listen at how Amir Lehavut prepared for this championship table.
I think the value of the live simulation that I did to a large extent depends on the quality of the players that you have there with you. In my case, I felt there was a really strong group of players, and it really helped in figuring out likely dynamics that would come up at the table, likely situation in terms of how long it's going to take people to bust, or how long it's going to take us to get to six-handed, five-handed, etc. So yeah, those things obviously are very, very helpful.
Yeah, Antonio, I'm not a big fan of the live simulation. Where do you stand with the players who do the final table simulation play?
I mean, I think there's definitely some free information to be gained, but you know, poker is just so situational, and no matter how much you do the simulation, it's just never going to be the same. And so it could, in some ways, backfire to how you should approach it.
That backfired on me. I did actually a live simulation at the beginning of my second marriage.
All right, let me jump in here. Farber with a raise from early position at ace-king of diamonds, and he will take down the blinds and antes. Let's go down to Kara Scott on the floor for a little more on Amir. Kara.
Well, in fact, Amir did do a simulation, but he didn't just have anybody there. He told me earlier that he actually had our 10th place finisher, Carlos Mortensen, also obviously former main event champion, there helping him out. And he just wanted to point out what a class act the man is after busting to come back and help him prepare.
38-year-old Amir Lehavut, the oldest at this table. How about that? 38 and the oldest at a final table, Norman.
But he says he doesn't feel old. He says he feels great. He says in his 20s, he thought 30 years old was old. I know in my 20s, I thought Lon was old.
Benefield and Farber both fold. Farber getting some respect with his early position raise on that last hand, and rightly so with ace-king suited.
And now remember, all these players get to know what their opponents had on a 15-minute delay, and so every break, I can assure you, they each have someone telling them what the other person had. So that's
unless they haven't played a hand like Luz Lee, who
right.
finally is in the pot with $1.2 million. Round to Tran now. JC wants to look at Luz Lee's stack, which began the hand, as you see, $13.5 million.
There will be no neck tails from Luz Lee today.
A call from Tran for $700,000 more from the big blind. And so Tran will play this pot out of position. 5, ace, king, 2 diamonds. A check from JC to the pre-flop razor. So Luz Lee checks back. Turn card. 6 of clubs.
We've seen Luz Lee slow play a couple of hands leading up to the final table. And so his check back on the flop doesn't necessarily mean he's slow playing a big hand. Perhaps he caught just a little piece of that flop and doesn't want to put himself in a check raise kind of situation. With a hand like king 10 or king jack or even king queen, I think he would check back for sure. A weak ace, I think there's a chance he might check back.
See JC check. Luz Lee was one of our day 7 chip leaders with about 34 million chips. Of course, a lot of those went away. He entered the championship table with 19.6 million in 6th place.
1.6 million.
Check from Tran. Luz Lee with $1.6 million.
2 checks from Tran. So that's usually a pretty big sign of weakness.
And we've seen this before from Tran. Trying to fool around, and there's top pair for Luz Lee. And they will take the pot.
And Tony, your card reading abilities appear to be stronger here than when you actually play. You're doing a tremendous job of reading these hands.
Sylvain's brother, Olivier Luz Lee, in the crowd. Big French contingent. There's a big French contingent in London where Sylvain lives and plays a lot of poker, and they do share their ideas.
You were preempted.
Once again, chip denominations. 25,000, the small one. Lavender chip worth 100K, but they're pushing around that big one. 250,000 is that desert sand colored chip.
Yeah, those blinds going up recently, as Antonio mentioned, 215,500. We have 2 players now under 20 big blinds, David Benefield and the short stack Mark Newhouse.
Bud takes over the chip lead after Tran forced to fold in the previous hand, but still very tightly bunched group on this leaderboard up top.
It's 1.2 million chips in orbit, which adds up pretty quick. There's also a huge pay jump as each spot, and so I think that a lot of players are concerned about that. I mean, we're talking about a lot of money here.
Well, they have all been paid over $733,000 for a guaranteed 9th place finish, of course. 8th place is bumped up 211,000 to almost 945,000. That is what 8th place will pay, but we still have to determine 9th place still here.
2,350,000.
So we have an interesting little situation brewing here. It's, you know, I would have bet a lot that McLaughlin was going to come in for a raise on the button here when it's folded around to him. We saw JC 3-bet him in position with King 7 suited earlier, and I'm sure by now McLaughlin knows this.
Having, as it were, spies in the audience who are watching our telecast on a 15-minute delay. Perfectly fine, as long as it's a level playing field. All players have access to that information, should they wish to take advantage of it.
Mooi. Vond gewoon heel braaf achter de manier op te sturen.
Zullen ik hem houden?
Ja, dat weet ik.
Stung
Ja, dat zegt hij ook gewoon.
a while ago, giving up a double up, dropped him into 5th place.
Ja.
JC Tran getting busy. We've seen JC involved in hands, but not quite like this, and he will show some strength. King 7 gets ace 9 to fold.
He loves to raise McLaughlin with King 7. And now, by the way, I think that if McLaughlin had 30 to 40 million chips, I don't see JC doing that. But because he is putting pressure on McLaughlin, you know, he only has 20 million chips, so now he calls his raise. It's a significant portion of his stack, misses the flop, and then what's he gonna do?
So you can pressure the middle stacks in
course.
certain situations just as much as the short stacks.
Of course. Having a bigger stack to your opponent is such an advantage. It's almost unexplainable.
Heather Tran, a lot of family members here. They flew in on a private jet. They've got a backup hospital here in Las Vegas just in case they need it.
I also interned as a midwife in the late 80s.
You're ready.
Ace, it comes up.
Raise to 1,200,000.
And I imagine that hand that JC just won against McLaughlin, not only getting chips, but picking up a lot of confidence as well, being able to win the hand with those cards against a formidable opponent of Marc-Etienne McLaughlin. You see Luz Lee with an opening raise to 1.2 million under the gun. First player to act. Gets the button. JC to fold. Benefield folds his small. Now Farber in the big blind gives it up as well, and Luz Lee will take it with an early raise. Luz Lee with ace king. So everybody playing the right way so far with the hands they get.
So far, so good. I've just seen a couple of incredible laydowns that I might have gone broke with. Benefield with the 10s and Reese with the ace queen. What a fantastic laydown.
So still 9-handed. Sylvain Luz Lee in 6th place now, stacking 16.5 million chips. First ever World Series cash. As mentioned, he doesn't play a lot of live poker. He has over $1 million in online earnings.
Yeah, Luz Lee, Jay Farber, and Ryan Reese, both in their first main event ever, and they're all staring at $1 million paydays or better.
You saw the beautiful
Raise to
one main event bracelet sitting at the front of this Penn and Teller stage, worth about $500,000. Just the bracelet, which is worth more than most of the bracelet victories that occurred during the summer at the World Series of Poker. McLaughlin with a raise to an even $1 million. That's a minimum raise.
And it's such a valuable play because you risk $1 million to win 1.2. If it works, you know, just half the time, you're breaking even. But it's great for your image because you're in there all the time. And nobody likes to play with loose, aggressive, crazy players.
Loosely called for the big blind. King 6, 2 clubs. Loosely checks now to the pre-flop raiser, Mark-Etienne McLaughlin. You would expect something from McLaughlin here.
Yeah, I think there's a very good chance that he's going to continuation bet this flop. It's hard for Loosely to proceed if he missed the flop, and we all know the chances are that he did miss the flop. That's just the way Hold'em works. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to make a pair.
$1.2 million from Mark-Etienne, and Loosely considers that and reaches for chips instead of his cards.
So that was a little Hollywood because he grabbed more chips than he needed, kind of acting like maybe I'm thinking about raising, and then just called. So him just calling out of position here pretty much takes 2 pairs and sets out of his range.
Queen of clubs now on the turn. Another check from Loosely.
I think it's much more likely he has a drawing hand or had a drawing hand on the flop, or just a 1-pair kind of hand. That's why having position is so important, because you can gain so much information about your opponent's hand just based on what he does after you bet.
Continuation bet, when it gets called, changes your whole mindset, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, if Mark McLaughlin has complete air, he has to think, well, if I fire barrel 2, will it work?
McLaughlin now, chips in hand, lavender, desert sand colored, and
Bet 2.7 million.
2.7 million now for McLaughlin. Is that a second barrel, or does he really have it?
Well, this is interesting because there's a lot of hands, premium hands, that he'd probably check back with. You know, if he had ace-king offsuit, the queen of clubs has to scare him on some level, and so there's a very good chance he might actually check it back. So with this bet, he's basically saying I have a really good hand, or to me, he could have absolute air. He just knows that it's very hard for Loosely to continue without a flush, or, you know, I don't really see any way that he could have had a straight unless he called the flop with ace-10, which I think is very unlikely.
We saw the 2010 world champion, Jonathan Duhamel, in the corner of McLaughlin. So Loosely,
even if Loosely has just a king in his hand, it's very hard for him to continue. And usually when they look back like this, they're going to fold.
He
knows what they
earlier, and now reaching for the cards.
Well, this time they might have changed.
Maybe he doesn't like his hand. He does not like his hand.
He goes for McLaughlin, will take it down. McLaughlin with the straight. Loosely with top pair.
And as you said, Antonio, just with the king, the pair of kings, is very tough for him to call there. And again, makes the correct laydown.
Mark-Etienne McLaughlin picking up chips, much to delight of his multicolored supporters. This is poker's biggest night. Stick around. We've got the biggest payday also. Welcome back to fabulous Las Vegas and the fabulous World Series of Poker main event championship table action underway. Amir Leavat with an opening raise under the gun to $1 million. He was called by Sylvain Loosely in the small blind, the flop of 4, queen 5. Leavat with $1 million chips and a call from Loosely. We're joined on our booth also by last year's main event champion, Greg Merson. Greg, you enjoying it so far?
Yeah, it's a lot less pressure on this side of the fence for sure.
Amazing the action so far. I don't know if you've been seeing all the hole cards or everything, but you would have appreciated some big hands like that earlier on last year, right?
Well, I did. I actually had ace-king a bunch of times, but yeah,
a bunch is an understatement.
Yeah, the big pairs are a lot better than ace-king.
Indeed. 9 of diamonds now on the turn. Loosely checked it to Leavat. Loosely, as you see at the top of your screen, in 6th place, Leavat with the much bigger stack, 20 million more than Loosely in 2nd place. Do you have a favorite out there, Greg? You know a lot of these guys.
I think JC has the best shot. I'm also rooting for Mark McLaughlin. Really great online player. We've played with him a bunch.
But with another bet after Loosely's check, this time $2.5 million.
It's nice to have Greg Merson in here. So we can just, when we want to know what somebody has, we can just ask him or just tell us. And anytime you want to know Norman, just he's right here.
Here's his wife, Adil Kozanlu.
You already nailed 2 of them, Antonio, the 10s and the ace-jack. That was nice.
We told him that. You don't have to like keep telling him that. That's all right.
Yeah, when there's no money on the table, it's a lot easier to make the reads.
Loosely once again removing the card protector chip that he had, as he did before, and then folded, and Amir will take it with ace deuce of diamonds, nut flush draw. Loosely gives up ace king.
And I think that given his
Amir Lehavat says his son changed his whole outlook on life a couple of years ago. He's got that chess mind. He was a junior chess champion in Texas after coming over from Israel, and 16 years old when he did make the move over here with his family. And right now he is in the chip lead of the 2013 World Series of Poker main event. It's nice to hear when people are putting that title on you, right, Greg?
Yeah, it never gets old, that's for sure.
So, Greg, when at your final table last year, you came in 3rd at chips. Was your intent to take a look at how everyone was playing over the first hour, or just let the cards play themselves?
Yeah, I think it's really important to not have too much of a game plan coming in, just because poker is so much about adjusting to what your opponents are doing on the fly. And I mean, I had somewhat of an idea of what players would be thinking coming in, but certainly it was just adjusting to how the action was, you know, playing out.
Mark-Etienne McLaughlin with an opening raise to $1 million from the 3rd position. Tran, Benefield, Farber fold back to Loosely. Loosely has to be careful. He cannot enter too many pots and fold. He doesn't have that many chips. On the button here. Purple house folds, the new house folds. His big blind, and McLaughlin will take the blinds and antes.
Yeah, this table now, definitely the haves and the have-nots. The top 5 are in comfort position, and then the bottom 4 all in the danger zone.
Another pocket pair for McLaughlin.
That is his 5th pocket pair in our first couple of dozen hands.
Might have been another one. He folded 7s to the, was it 10s?
8s.
The 8s.
That was right. That is his 6th pocket pair in the first couple dozen hands.
Greg, would you have laid it down? I don't think I would have. I think I would have called one more time.
I thought the fold was fine. It's going to be really tough for him to continue on the river if he is getting bluffed by 2 overcards. The 3rd barrel is almost always coming, and it's just really tough for him to call the river bet.
Don't miss a minute of this 2013 World Series of Poker main event final table. We're going to show them all to you, every hand, right up to crowning a brand new world champion. Leavitt opens for $1 million under the gun. Folded around to David Benefield. 8.3 million chips. The second short stack says all in.
I like Benefield. He doesn't really Hollywood. Kind of either mucks his cards or he ships all in.
Now Farber looks like he might have a hand. Farber's been folding quickly and not playing a lot of hands.
Farber looks like he wants to do some push-ups.
This is very bad news for David. Certainly when you shove, you don't want to see one of the tighter players at the table go into the tank right away.
That is absolutely correct.
Benefield became good friends with Tom Dwan by talking poker, eventually became roommates and co-homeowners. And David actually credits Dwan with opening up his eyes to the unique possibilities of playing poker. And it has served David Benefield very well, but he does get Farber to fold.
One obstacle out of the way. The original razor still slooms.
And Lehavat gives up his $1 million chips, and Benefield will take it with ace-queen. Lehavat gives up a pocket pair.
No problem either. A lot of people would have thought about it or given a little Hollywood. insta-muck pocket sixes.
So what do you think of Benefield's range so far? The hands he's shoving with, pretty normal, Antonio? So far?
Yeah, I mean, he's got about 10.5 million in chips. It's over $1 million around, and so I'm not surprised to see him shipping it with sixes.
Benefield right on Brummelhouse's tail, both of them with 10 million chips.
So last year, Greg, with the 15-minute delay we're on, how much information did you absorb later on to find out about hands, or how much did you ignore that?
No, I took it full advantage of it, and anyone who's played online where you can access the showdowns a lot more frequently than in live poker, I think it benefits the guys that have the online experience that can, then use that to their advantage with the metagame and kind of stay ahead of their opponents. So I was definitely taking full advantage of it.
That is the voice of Greg Merson, last year's World Series of Poker main event champion. He has been through the grind, and he has shown everybody how to come through the fire and follow back-to-back breaks with that, actually, right? Did that give you confidence going into the main event, or were you too worn out to think about it the first few days?
Yeah, that's I was definitely coming into the main really exhausted, but at least there's a few days off in the first 3 days of the event, and definitely took advantage of the time off and got some rest. And the main event's only once a year, so it's not too hard to get the energy to play. And perhaps for some reason maybe overlooked Player of the Year last year as well when you won the main event. So congratulations. We didn't get a chance really to give you a big send-off live last year. We went off so quickly. So Barber picks up kings, picks up a pot.
Yeah, Greg Merson was Player of the Year, and he's terrific, but if he's off his game a little any given week, he's not even the best player in the state of Maryland.
Really?
He knows he's got friends who are very, very good in that state. They produce some good talent. He's got to stay on his A game.
What's your mailing address right now?
I'm in Maryland. I'm not one of the people who's a better player than him.
Oh, okay.
But when you got guys like Christian Harder and Anthony
right.
Craig, it's an incredible state. We don't produce just crabs. We produce great poker players.
We produce blue crabs. Awesome. You see Barber with 27.7 million in fourth place. J.C. Tran will open the pot for $1.1 million under the gun. Tran in second place at the moment, and not far off the pace set by Amir Lehavat. Mark Newhouse now, the short stack at this table, 6.3 million.
Oh, it looks like he's
No, I
thought the same thing.
Yeah, I thought he was really going to do something.
Reese folds the button. Lehavat now in the small blind. Folds to McLaughlin in the big. Just 600,000 more to call. Do you want to play out of position against J.C. Tran? Well, there's our answer.
Yeah, the price is good, but again, it's really not where you want to be playing a pot out of position against the chip leader, who also is a very good player with a lot of experience.
Out of position, of course, for the newcomers out there. It will be McLaughlin's turn to act. And so JC will have the advantage of knowing what his opponent does, and it's a check from Marc Etienne.
It's very likely that JC will follow up with a continuation bet.
There it is.
And it's funny because both players know this, and so it's not like it's a surprise or anything.
And because of the stack size, it's really tough for Mark to put in a check raise here. He doesn't want to blow up the pot out of position. There's 3-4 short stacks, and his stack has a lot of equity, so JC can bet with confidence, knowing that he's almost never getting check raised.
There's a call from McLaughlin. Greg Merson, is it fair to say that they're thinking they want to make a little more money after all their effort coming in here? Is the money enter into the equation?
I don't know if it's necessarily the money jumps in general, but it's just the equity you have with your chips to try to win the tournament. There is some degree of like money jumps coming into the decisions they're making, but I think this is such a stacked final table. A lot of these guys aren't too worried about making like pay jumps.
Right, I agree with that, especially these two. There's McLaughlin and Tran are not thinking about the pay jump right now at all. They're thinking about taking control and playing their hands.
Like they're not thinking about it, but they're also not just going to play a 50 million chip pot here very often. So
third,
yeah, unless you have nuts versus second nuts or something.
Third diamond falls on the turn. The king of diamonds. A check from McLaughlin was greeted with a bet of $1.65 million from J.C. Tran. McLaughlin will give it up, and J.C. Tran will take the chip lead back. J.C. turning top pair.
And so that just goes to show the power of position. Even though Tran happened to turn, you know, second top pair on the turn, had it come another 3, it's hard for McLaughlin to continue.
J.C. Tran came into this championship table as the chip leader, and more often than not, the chip leader goes away without the bracelet. They do go away with a lot of money more often than not, save Philip Hilm, who was run over by Jerry Yang on Jerry's way to the bracelet. Not surprising, Norman, they win a lot of money. Is it surprising they don't win more, do you think?
Well, the chip leader generally should finish in the top 3. It's tough, though, to win. I always say I take the field against the chip leader in any tournament. The one great exception again remained Jamie Gold up there, who was like Usain Bolt, wire to wire, nobody could catch him. It was just a thing of beauty or ugliness, depending on your perspective.
Well, you did take the man to your left here, to your left, Greg Mercer last year. So.
You know, I had a hunch there, and
he wasn't the chip leader, but
you know, he's got a good game.
He's got a lot of heart.
All right, so Farber, who we've seen open with ace king and kings, opens again to $1.1 million. And everybody knows the snug player that Jay Farber is. Comes into the World Series of Poker with about $2,300 in winnings, and now he's looking at, he's already scored over 700,000. Farber now with ace queen suited will take it. And how much of a disadvantage when you for that amateur player, for the non-pro Greg Merson, knowing, I mean, you go there, everybody knows you know, I'm going to play snug, you know you're going to play snug. How do you get ahead in that type of situation as that amateur type player?
Well, he's very fortunate to have some really good poker players in his corner, Ben Lamb, and I know Justin Sylvia has been speaking with him as well. So they're letting him know what's going on the 15-minute delay and how people are perceiving him. And I think that he's using his image very well so far. And you see right there when he opens JC's big blind, he's way more likely to have a much stronger hand than, say, he opens David's big blind, where, you know, David's pretty much shoving or folding. So I wasn't surprised to see ace queen suited there.
But there's no yin without yang. At some point, he's got to use that tight image to open it up a little bit, right?
Yeah, for sure. When they get down to shorthand, it'll be interesting to see how he opens up his game.
You saw the pandas in the crowd. Combat Panda, that's pretty much Jay Farber's mascot here for this championship table. Lucy opens for a raise of $1.2 million. No takers so far. Bitterfield folds around to Farber, and Lucy will take it with jacks.
It's always nice to just win with no contest with jacks, because a lot of times overcards come, you get re-raised and re-raised, and you know, sometimes with jacks I just take the money.
Indeed.
Norm, what do you think about pocket jacks?
Well, they are the Lon McCarron Memorial hand. They haven't killed him off literally, but anytime he plays with them, he loses. I don't play with them either, and I don't play with ace queen, as we know. So.
Yeah, I got much grief. Norman watched me on a streamed poker event, and I lost most of my chips with jack, all of my chips with ace queen, and I never heard the end of it. There is the bracelet designed by Jason of Beverly Hills, and that is one monster piece of jewelry. And you said you'd done something special with your bracelet from last year for your mom, right?
Yes, I did. We ended up taking a link out because it was too big for my small wrist, and made a little necklace out of it for her, so she wears it from time to time.
And your dad, he's got a bracelet himself, right?
Yeah, I almost won a bracelet on Father's Day, got 5th in the 4-max, and told him that if I would have won, I would have given it to him for Father's Day, and then the next tournament I played, I ended up winning, so he was entitled to that one.
Very nice, very nice.
Who gives their bracelets to their parents? What kind of move is that?
You know,
well,
hopefully I get to have more than 2, so the next one will be mine.
Lehevat with a raise to $1 million. McLaughlin to his left makes the call. Bitterfield with $9.7 million.
That's pretty smooth.
Yeah, I was just copying. Yeah,
that's pretty smooth.
And Farber folds as well.
Flip that chip out. Same motion. That's pretty smooth.
All right, so heads up after Farber gives up his big blind. McLaughlin and Lehevat 4-6 king, 2 diamonds. Lehavut first to act here, designated by the yellow border around his name.
Standard c-bet coming to a theater near you.
Lehavut, the original raiser. If McLaughlin had re-raised, he's then obligated to make the c-bet, right? Because he's taken control of the hand, as they say.
It's almost as if you have a contractual agreement.
I know.
And it's binding. If you are the pre-flop raiser, you have to stab on the flop.
It seems silly to me, but I'm not playing at that level.
It just kind of puts you on the offense and your opponent on the defense. And if you want to be a winning, no-limit hold'em player, you really have to be more offense and defense.
$1.25 million from Lehavut.
Yeah, he's almost never folding his flatting range here. I play a little differently in these spots. I mean, depending on what you have. If you have a hand with no equity, say like ace-jack of hearts, if Lehavut has ace-jack of hearts, he just has to c-bet here and hopefully take it down. But I don't expect McLaughlin to be folding too often on this flop with his flatting range. Maybe like 10% of the time he would give it up on the flop.
$5.7 million in the middle, jack of spades on the turn.
And so I think for the non-professional, by flatting, it's kind of when you call with a hand just to put your opponent on defense. So when McLaughlin calls on the flop, if Lehavut is bluffing, it really changes the aspect of the hand there. And so there's a lot of hands that don't connect with the flop that McLaughlin can call with on the flop just to see what happens on the turn.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, any pair between the pocket pair between sixes and kings, and you know, any backdoor clubs, 7-8 clubs, you know, any ace-high clubs, ace-10 clubs, ace-queen clubs.
Amir cedes power here with the check, and McLaughlin with chips in hand. We'll get a quick count here.
2.5 million.
$2.5 million.
Right, and McLaughlin doesn't come off as super strong to me so far.
Lehavut's check looked pretty weak there. I don't know if you saw, he was looking at his chips, and as he was counting out his bet, that's usually a sign of weakness. I would be surprised if he wasn't check folding here.
Yeah, my money's on check fold. Oh, and we're both wrong.
But you know, at this level, there's certain guys doing this on purpose too, so it's tough to decipher whether it's weakness or strength.
There is the call from Amir Lehavut, and
it's unlikely that Lehavut has just a draw. I think it's much more likely that he has at least a pair. Certainly, I don't think he has a two-pair hand. Even with a pair of queens or maybe even a pair of tens, he's continuing.
Yeah, the only draw hands he has are a pair and draw hands, I would imagine. You know, like 4 or 5 diamonds or something like that, where he can get value from bets like floats that are betting, and disguises his hand and controls the size of the pot out of position.
10.7 million chips in the middle, and another check from Lehavut. He checked the turn. McLaughlin followed with the bet that got called by Lehavut. So a very confusing hand for McLaughlin.
Lehavut, you know, he for sure doesn't have a full house. He's got either a pair and has 2 pairs with kings, or he could have a king in his hand. Even with a hand like king 10 or king queen, I think there's a very reasonable chance that he check calls the turn. And so by checking on the river out of position, it's clear that he just wants to go to showdown.
And this is when you get into that leveling where the board doesn't necessarily change on the river here. And you know, if you're check calling the turn, your opponent's most likely check calling the river. So then it becomes, you know, if McLaughlin bets here, you should almost never be bluffing. But then it's just a matter of deciding, you know, what level is he on, and whether or not he can pull the trigger here with maybe like missed diamonds or something. Looks like he's gonna. Oh.
Could Amir be bluffing here?
Amir, no, out of position in this spot. You know, I think he just wants to go to showdown.
Look at this. A huge bet from Mark Etienne McLaughlin with the paired board, and a quick call. It looks like there's some kings out there. Yeah, they both have the king, but it's McLaughlin with the full boat. Kings full of jacks to take it down.
Wow, what a huge hand.
The turn was kind of McLaughlin, and then what a killer river card for Amir.
McLaughlin picks up another huge pot. Amir Lehavat fell victim. He rivered Trip Kings, and he drops down to 5th place. Trip Kings not good enough at this championship table. McLaughlin into 2nd place. 9th place money already paid out on this Wild Turkey final table payout chart. So no money for 9th place finisher tonight. 8th place, $944,000. 7th place is when we get into the 7 figures, and then it jumps up quickly. 3rd place worth $3.7 million. Top prize to be awarded tomorrow night on ESPN, over $8.3 million. Mark Etienne McLaughlin with $35.7 million. And he is right now on JC Tran's tail. Tran with $36.4 million is our chip leader in this very energized Penn and Teller Theater at the Rio. Joined by last year's main event champion, Greg Merson. And I suppose, Greg, nothing really can surprise you. Even at your young age, you've seen a lot of hands. I mean, things like that just happen, and nothing you can do about it, right?
Yeah, and he's actually fortunate that McLaughlin didn't, bet more or even possibly overbet the pot there.
Because he just puts it in, right?
Yeah, it's really tough for him to get away from it. Even if he bets like 12 million into 10 on the river, it's just cooler.
Lehavat with a raise to 1 million. Queen Jack will take it as everyone else folds. So here Lehavat gets a few chips back. What does that do to you mentally, Antonio, when something like that happens? You have to be experienced to know that the coolers are going to happen and roll with it, huh?
To me or him, because I think it affects him a lot less than me.
All right. So the fireworks continue to fly here at the Penn and Teller Theater after 30 hands. Who knows what will happen next? Come on back and find out.
Yeah, having fun with all my friends here playing dodgeball.
That's just some super aggro dodgeball players. I didn't see any passive play there.
Well, I thought dodgeball was bad enough when we saw him up in Quebec, but trampoline dodgeball, that is, I can't believe they did it.
Greg and I versus you two. Let's go. I think I like our chances.
Oh, boy, do we need handicap. Boy, do we have handicap. All right, Huck Seats tweeting former world champion, sweating the World Series final table. Hey, Greg and PT Mueller. It's great when you have 3 friends at the final table. Where's Joe?
Well, Huck Seed, one of Mark Newhouse's friends and mentors, helped Mark sort of turn around his life when he went up and down with the bankroll. Huck has a lot of experience with that, and he's just given great counsel to Mark Newhouse over the last couple of years.
And Mark Newhouse's final table, right before the final table, whole day 7, kind of mirrored his career, where he was flush with chips and then he lost it all and then he worked his way back. And he could have been out of here very quickly when he ran his queens into kings, but spiked the queen and
raised to 1 million.
Doubled up, and he's still around, though, the short stack. About 12 minutes left before we take a break, and we are taking break mid-level because we have about 42 minutes left in the level from July, as you may recall. So we're playing 1 hour of this 2-hour level. So about 12 minutes or so of play left, and we'll take a break. We'll have Phil Hellmuth and Marianella Pereira taking you through that break. So we're going to stick around. A lot of interesting info coming from them. McLaughlin with the raise. Tran made the call.
Tran doesn't like that McLaughlin has all these chips. He wants to be table captain, and he doesn't like that McLaughlin is kind of stepping in on his territory. But he certainly loves being behind him.
These two clashing once again. The 2 top stacks at this championship table, separated by less than 1 million.
And McLaughlin's been the most active here, and of course his cards apparently dictating that. We have seen him in a lot of hands here in the early going.
9-8 queen, as you see, rainbow board, all different suits. When we say rainbow board, what that means?
1.3.
You heard it, Tran heard it, 1.3 million. JC. Nice, calm, quick call. He's not going to let McLaughlin get under his skin 5 apart on the turn.
McLaughlin, of course, very close with Jonathan Duhamel, but Jonathan gave him very little poker advice going into this November 9. Gave him advice about enjoying the ride, playing your own game. But they didn't really talk particulars.
There's so many factors surrounding being a member of the November 9. As you know, Greg, your time is chopped up in so many parts during every day. The request to have you appear, talk, whatever, it can be a real drain, right?
Yeah, but it is awesome to wake up at the final table for 100 some days before you actually get to play. It's pretty awesome feeling.
1.85 million from J.C. Tran now after McLaughlin's check. And Marquette will lay it down, and J.C. will take it with the bigger ace. He has the queen on the turn. Your front, right? Stack is dirty.
And a lot of people might 3-bet there with ace queen, but I like calling because it keeps your hand so hidden.
So J.C. Tran once again in the chip lead with almost 40 million moved to the United States at age 2 from Vietnam. Avid fisherman and Sacramento Kings fan, as you can tell by his hat, and 2 World Series bracelets, a WPT title as well, over $8 million in live earnings, and once again with over 20% of the chips in play, just about where he started relative to the rest of the field. One of the most solid players in the game. It was no secret that once he was a chip leader that just about anybody he talked to was going to pick J.C. Tran.
Yeah, but we have seen Greg Morrison, a lot of cash game people having success recently, Loosely and Farber this year, and of course yourself. Is there much, did you find much of adjustment when you go from cash to tournament? Is it your same game, or what adjustments do you make?
There's several adjustments that need to be made. You can't really just bet really thin for value in certain spots, because tournament life and having chips is really important than getting those small edges through like you do in cash games. And you know, in a field like this, or in a structure like this where you get the 2-hour levels, it favors the cash game players. And you know, each year I think you're going to see more and more cash game players going deep and making the November 9.
Sylvain Loosely, one of the shorter stacks. You mentioned, Norman, this field pretty much split between the haves and have-nots. Loosely in 6th place with just 12 million chips. Limps in for $500,000.
This is the school of Greg Merson. The old Limpy Lou on the button.
It's surprising to see that from Loosely. I thought that he would be much more of a wild card.
Yeah, so far he
certainly
is not.
early, but yeah.
Newhouse checks his option at the big blind. 7, 5, 5, 2 hearts. But what a treat to be able to see a free flop with the big blind at the championship table. Check from Newhouse.
Newhouse is so low, he can't even maneuver, he can't stab, he can't really do much. So unless he really hit this flop, I think it's very likely that Loosely will just bet and pick up the pot here.
Yeah, and Loosely's going to have something maybe like, you know, 8-9 suited, 9-10 off, Jack-10 off, just hands that are decent but can't raise call. Oh wow.
Or aces.
Yeah.
That's very tricky.
That too. That too. Loosely's crowd, including Ludovic Lacaille there in the middle. Big French contingent. It has been quite an evening so far through the first 32 hands. Through the first 12 hands, we could have been down to 7 players. Mark Newhouse got his queens in against McLaughlin's kings, but Newhouse flopped a queen to win it. Loosely, Benefield. We're at it. Benefield got it in bad, but he turned a flush to double up McLaughlin and Lehavut. Lehavut with river trip kings, but McLaughlin rivers kings full to take that big pot. So a very active championship table so far. And yeah, we could be playing the 7-handed, but no, still every player who started is still here.
You never know.
It's going to be a long, long night.
The blinds are going to catch up with them soon. And Greg, you had an interesting point last night when we were at the Hall of Fame dinner that we are deeper in the tournament and there's fewer chips. And you think, because of the fewer entrants, you think that will play a factor?
Yeah, and I certainly think that we'll get to heads up much quicker than last year. Well, it'd be hard not to, because I believe we broke the record for most hands played, and you know, these guys are playing faster than our table played last year, and for the most part, I think they're much more aggressive players.
I'm still in therapy because of your three-handed play last year. It's costing me a lot of money.
JC Tran, the chip leader, with a raise to 1.1 million.
I always show it at the end.
Third position, and he will take
just in case.
the hand. And showed, but an ace. Ace 10. Okay, there it is. This takes a little while to get through the ether and into your homes. Reese with not a hand to call with.
Antonio, what do you think about the lurk with aces?
I think it's very tricky. I mean, you could see that the small blind was confused by it and wanted to maybe do something. So, you know, I think that given the small blind and big blind are short stacked, it was fine.
I'm Lon McCarron with Norman Chad, Antonio Esfandiari, joined by Greg Mercer, last year's main event champion. Harris Scott on the floor at the break. Phil Hamilton, Marianella Pereira will give you a lot of good information. There's a lot to talk about. Every player has their cheering contingent dressed up in their special garb. Barber's got his combat panda with him on the table. Who knows what's going to happen? Tran with a raise to 1.1 million. JC over 40 million now, just shy of 41 million actually, and he has extended his lead over McLaughlin.
All right, he's showing him. You got him.
Tran will take it again. And that, the nuts and bolts of poker is you have to raise, you have to steal the blinds and antes. King Jack of clubs, not necessarily a steal, but you have to do it. It's part of the game. That's how you build a stack. And JC's crowd loves it. So when Phil and Marianella take over, we're going to talk about the 1 billion hand database and how some of these hands relates to that. Closer look at David Benefield, who looks like he will survive this first level and a half. That is coming up in just a few minutes during the break.
Okay. Okay.
Lines right now, as you see, 250,000, 500,000, and 50,000 chip ante. $1.2 million in the pot before the cards are dealt. $1.2 million it cost each player each round. No one wants to venture in. Now Ryan Reese on the button. Reese sits with almost 27 million chips in fourth place.
Ryan Reese he was playing 1-2 no limit hold'em just a couple of years ago in Lansing, Michigan. From there to here, and a chance for $8.5 million.
McLaughlin now with a bigger stack than Reese. McLaughlin in the big blind.
McLaughlin might want to just get his own dealer and go off someplace else because he's in every other hand, and it might speed up the game if he has his own dealer.
And it seems like he's always out of position. 3 clubs, 9, Jack, 7. Mark, first to act here once again.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lead here. It's a good spot to lead, especially with no equity hands, or, I mean, possibly a check raise, but that's more of a cash game play. It's just really hard for Ryan to continue against the lead here.
This is how you win main events.
That is your
You just know.
champion from last year, Greg Mercer. He knows of what he speaks. $1.5 million from McLaughlin.
I think leading out is so important, and nobody does it anymore.
Reese, the original raiser pre-flop, makes the call. Takes a look at his counterpart from north of the border. He's in Brossard, Quebec, Canada. Does McLaughlin just across the St. Lawrence River from Montreal. Another club falls on the turn.
I think Reese would have called with any pair on the flop, with any big club in his hand. And so this club is very interesting. Let's see what happens on the turn.
Yeah, and these guys actually have some history from, I believe it was day 6 or day 7, where McLaughlin made a good call against Reese with 7-3 of spades versus the pocket jacks. So that could definitely play into how this hand has played out.
Check, check. 4 of hearts on the river.
Yeah, day 7, they had a lot of duels, including the hand you just mentioned. So some recent history between the two that they can draw back on.
And not that far separated in chip counts.
It's very often when Reese checks behind the turn here that he has a club in his hand.
1.6.
And there was a situation like this also with, I think it was 4 Sipco suits on the board. Reese fired out representing the flush, but he didn't have it. McLaughlin made the call, but this time Reese does have the queen of clubs, and he'll take it with the flush. Ryan's girlfriend and the rest of his cheering contingent love to see him move up the chip count.
I didn't love that bet on the river just because I think that when Reese checks it back on the turn, he really just wants to calm down on the river. So I think I would have given up on the river.
And you see Reese moves into 2nd place past Barber and McLaughlin as the players get ready for the last hand before the break. The crowd is certainly ready for anything here at the Penn and Teller Theater. Just a reminder, we are taking this break just halfway through this level at 250 and 500,000. So when we come back after the 15-minute break, we'll be playing at the same level. Greg, have you noticed, do going to break hands play differently sometimes?
That's a really good question. I'm not really sure if that affected how everyone played last year.
Okay. Newhouse all in for just over $5 million here.
And Reese wants a count, so.
Yeah. We could be seeing some action here.
Reese is calling, I think. There's no version of him that's folded.
Yeah, he's grabbing a big stack of those chips and does make the call. So Mark Newhouse at risk. Any other takers? Doubtful. So let's take a look. Newhouse with 9s racing against the ace-king of Reese.
Everything standard there. Newhouse down to 10 big blinds. Happy to find a pocket pair. And the easy call from Reese with ace-king.
So Ryan Reese trying to come from behind and get our first knockout of this championship table. Newhouse at risk. He's the one ahead right now, but just barely.
There we go.
We've been in this position before. Mark Newhouse has been in this position before tonight at this championship table. Newhouse is the one looking to hold on now. Here is the flop, and there's the king for Ryan Reese. Mark Newhouse with 1 foot out the door.
Newhouse now a huge underdog to stay here. He's looking for a 9 or runner straight.
Let's see an 8 make it interesting.
Mark Newhouse looking calm. His job is done. Ryan Reese trying to pick up the last of Mark's chips and send Newhouse out the door. Another 7. And it comes down to one thing and one thing only on the river.
And Mark Newhouse twice tonight, all in with pocket pairs. First time he had to come from behind. This time he went behind on the flop, and now he's down to a 2-outer. Mark Newhouse will need a 9, or his November 9 is done.
Newhouse on the left sees the 6 of diamonds fall on the river, and we have our first knockout of this championship table. The wild ride in this main event for Mark Newhouse comes to an end, and it ends up costing him as he's knocked out by Ryan Reese. Mark Newhouse done in 9th place. He had the best hand going to the flop, but Reese popped the king, and Newhouse could not recover. And we thought this would happen a couple of hours ago. It has been quite an interesting championship table through 36 hands so far. Mark Newhouse has already been paid his 9th place money, but a tremendous effort for Newhouse to make this championship table. And he'll certainly enjoy the $733,000 plus. Greg Merson, thank you very much for joining us. Good luck to you. We're going to take a break. We are now 8-handed. Phil Hellmuth and Marianella will be back to take us through the break.